welcome to the Backyard Professor Chess videos. It's a beautiful fall day today. I'm out here in my backyard, out on the South Fork of the Snake River, and I'm studying some chess. I have another game on the Rooks that I want to share with you to show you the influence and power of the Rooks, how to use them in the open files, how to prevent your opponent from using them, how to put them on your opponent's 7th rank, etc. I'm doing a king gambit opening. This opening isn't seen so much in the higher echelons of chess. It's pretty much been refuted by the people who know absolutely everything about chess. I don't, so I feel safe in using it with my opponent here. I put my king in check here. He, of course, develops a beautiful pawn chain here, threatening my bishop, so I drop my bishop back. So I've got my bishop out at this point. And, of course, my opponent takes the central pawn. It's always a good idea to fight for the center. I've said that with a lot of my videos. I'm going to put pressure on the pawn and develop another power. My opponent's going to protect that pawn because it is a central pawn. He also develops another power this way, so I take the direct approach. I simply bring up my pawn to put pressure on his pawn, and he exchanged the pawn. Now at this point, instead of exchanging the pawn, I bring up yet another pawn to pressure his bishop, drive his bishop out, because at this point, notice something. The board is generally open. There aren't a lot of central pawns here. So the bishop's influence can have an enormous power and range here. So I'm going to try to minimize his bishops and their influence. At the same time, I'm going to try to speedily develop myself as much as I can, because I've caught him moving his bishop twice. He's moved his pawn twice, and now he takes a third pawn with this pawn, and I get my queen into the game by developing my queen. Now notice at this point, I am well developed. Not entirely yet, but I have several powers out as opposed to his one power. There's virtually nothing in the center, so this looks like it's a bishop's game. My opponent, I believe, makes a mistake in taking this pawn, threatening my knight. He's moving the same piece too many times, and it's giving me a chance to develop better. I don't have a pin here, so I centralize my knight on my outpost, which is a good spot for the knight given its central influence and radiation. He brings his bishop back up and threatens my queen and takes a long diagonal. Notice how influential his bishop is as opposed to my knights. Now my knights are okay. This one's really good, centrally developed, but it doesn't have the range of his bishop. And now, of course, I have to move my queen besides. So I say, what do you say, let's swap the ladies? I would rather have a game without the queens at this point, and he agrees. My opponent swaps the queens, which I believe is to my advantage in this particular point. I bring out my other bishop now. I'm greatly developed, and he only has one power. I don't think he's playing his opening right. He comes up to solidify his bishop. Whoops. I lied. He comes up to threaten my knight. He's using the beautiful anti-knight Steinitz rule, chase away the knight off its outpost, and it works here too because I back off. I don't want to lose my knight. There's no reason. Notice what he's doing with his pawns. Now, he is underdeveloped at this point. He isn't nearly ready to castle on the king side or the queen side, but he's bringing his pawns up, and that's a pretty solid pawn wall with the bishop out front. That's about all he's got at this point. I'm feeling pretty good about this, so I go ahead and castle queenside. The reason I wanted to castle queenside is because it gives me this open file, so that I can open it up and prevent him from castling queenside. It will keep his king in the center of the board because he still has not developed his king side well at all. He's underdeveloped. I have a better development. I have an open file. I'm feeling pretty good at this point in this game. He again moves his bishop down to threaten my knight, which of course pins it to the rook. But that's like 4 or 5 moves with that one piece. I think this is an error. I now have a chance to bring in my other rook in the game, protect the knight, have a potential open file here because I know these pawns are going to be exchanged. So I'm feeling really good right now about this game. My opponent, I don't believe, has played it correctly, and in fact, he does something silly in my opinion. He exchanges the bishop for the knight. I don't think he should have done that. The board is relatively open. The bishops are going to have a better influence than the knights will in this game. At least that's the idea of the open board. I go ahead and take him with my rook, and he brings out his second bishop, grabbing a beautiful long diagonal here in the center. At this point, I say, okay, look, my opponent is underdeveloped. I'm vastly superior in development in this particular game. I will exchange bishops. I do want to take away his only power that he's developed at this point. And I know the board is open. It's a bishop's board. However, I also have the open file here, and I have a file here that I'm going to be able to open with my pawn. He's not going to get his rook in anytime soon for open files, and his king is still sitting there in the center. I do believe I'm willing to exchange the bishops at this point. He brings out his knight, and I move my knight, truly forcing him to exchange the bishops. He can't do any good coming here because I'll take him with the rook on the open file. Putting it back here is a complete waste of time. Double attacking his bishop and giving me a target here, even though this knight is supporting that at that point, so is that knight. But I've got targets. I'm willing to exchange the bishop, and he exchanges the bishops, which I believe is all to my advantage, because now I am fully developed. I have a wonderful central file here, a wonderful central open file here. He still can't castle. He has 3 powers that is non-used, and he's only got a knight that is next to no good at all. I like this setup very much. I'm very happy with what's going on. And then notice what my opponent does. He moves his rook to b8. He cancels his chance to castle queenside, which I believe is to my advantage. I double up the rooks on the file. I'm coming after this knight. I'm coming after the open file is what I'm doing. He brings his knight here to take my bishop. Rather than worry about this at this point, I have yet a third piece I can bring into this game as a direct pressuring of his king in the center. I believe the game is strategically lost for my opponent in black right now. I bring my knight up to here and go check. Now the king must move. He moves it in the wrong spot, in my opinion. He should have went the other direction, although that doesn't promise him a whole lot of escape either. However, he should have, because now look at the fork I can do. Because my opponent did not develop properly, he ignored his king side. He basically has only brought out 1 power at each time, while I have developed my entire army bearing pressure on various areas and points. I can now perform a beautiful tactic of putting him in check and forking his rook. He lost his rook because of a lack of development, because of a lack of any plan. It's actually a double check I put him in, so he has to move, so he comes back here, and of course I'm going to take complete advantage of this and take that rook. Absolutely. This game is a done deal. I gladly gave him my bishop for that exchange of that rook and that beautiful fork of the king. However, I'm going to do the anti-knight rule. I'm going to chase the knight away. I don't need him to be this close to me. He drops his knight back. Now, I begin noticing something. Besides the bugs that are landing on me, I began noticing something in this game. That's the fun of being in Mother Nature, man. I have an open file here with targets on this side. I can do a two-pronged approach here. I can come straight up, or I can come over and in. And I chose to come over and in, and he didn't play this right. He puts his knight on the outpost, which closes off this file. That's a pretty good move. However, in the process of doing that, he gave me targets. Silman says be target conscious, so I take the pawn, and now I'm going to obliterate his king side. I now have the 7th rank from here rather than through the center, because he's properly closed off the center with a pretty decent outpost of a knight. He's trying as best he can to stop the power of my rooks. But it's too little too late. In my opinion, it's way too little too late. He gets him a pawn, that's true. And he does have a good phalanx of pawns. Even though they're not central pawns, they're all building forward. So that's okay, except it's too little too late in my opinion. I'm going to activate my knight into this discussion with him. He brings his king over, and now notice, I have pigs on the 7th rank, both my rooks and my knight. Do you notice that my entire army is on his 7th rank? This is a pure attack. He will lose this game. It's a matter of technique. Like Alacom loves to say, now at this point, he is so strategically lost, now it's just a matter of technique. Pigs on the 7th because they can devour everything on this rank. Pulls his pawn forward to give his knight some structural outpost. I bring my knight out so that I can connect my rooks because I'm going for the jugular here. This game is by all rights over. He comes down, puts me in check. I move toward him so he has to move again. He comes over here and puts me in check again, and I say, enough of this nonsense. Absolutely enough of this nonsense. I'm going to move out of the way so he can't check me the next move, because I have business to attend to up here with my entire army breathing down his neck. He pops the knight out. Now at this point, I know very well I can go here and go checkmate. But he popped his knight out, and I'm feeling obnoxious. I'm going to teach him a lesson. So I took his knight. It's a sadistic thing, I suppose. Hey, neighbor. Neighbor's driving by. I'm at a campground here on the South Fork. So he comes down here and takes the pawn with his knight, and I go checkmate. I want you to recognize the power and the significance of the rooks. When you don't have the queens, when you exchange the queens, your 2 rooks are the next most powerful pieces. Activate them, find open files. If you can't find open files, make open files. Put your rooks on the open files, and then come into his camp, get his 7th rank, and win the game. That is what to do with rooks. So thanks for watching my videos. I love making these videos for you guys because it's a good reinforcement in my mind of the key concepts of how to play the different pieces. It's very fun for me to get out into my backyard and enjoy the beauty of the river and do some fishing and hunting and playing some chess. Instead of hunting the wildlife this time, I'm hunting enemy kings. And I'm getting my trophies. So thanks for watching and happy checkmating. And I certainly will see you in the next video.